Hi everyone, my name's Helen Knight. I'm the founder of Creative Business Brain, and today we're talking to Matt Davies about leadership and strategy. So, what really makes a successful leader? Would love to find out a little bit more about yourself and also ask you what it really takes to be a true leader. Hi Matt, lovely to meet you.
Great to meet you. Thank you so much, Helen, for having me on. It's an absolute honor to speak to you today. Yeah, I've got a bit of I guess, a weird background, which might be helpful just to kind of give you some snapshots so that you and your listeners know where I'm coming from. So, I grew up in London and then moved swiftly to Nottingham in the UK, which is in the Midlands.
Hmm.
And background in graphic design, so very much kind of went through school as a very creative person. Got a BTEC national diploma at Croydon College in graphic design. Started freelancing for family, friends, anyone that would want me. Did a lot of design work. Went across, worked on the Mac floor in agencies. Um, and yeah, it was basically a bit of a Mac monkey, right? Great. I was awesome at Adobe Illustrator, and I was very fast at that. And so, that was great. And also creative ideas, and coming up with kind of campaign ideas as sort of I progressed in my career as a designer. But I think I was about 22 at the time, I decided to set up my own studio, which started off as just me, and then I eventually kind of grew that. In the end, there was 12 of us. We had a penthouse suite in the center of Nottingham, and we were doing work with companies like Boots and Experian and Specsavers, so really kind of punching above our weight, which was really great fun.
Hmm.
But then me and my wife, we had a family, and basically I was suffering from a bit of burnout. I was just kind of like constantly chasing new projects, finding it very hard to get ongoing revenue in the business. Managed to do it for a while, but in the end just got so tired and wanted to be a much better father and husband. And so looked around. We managed to find a much bigger digital marketing agency. My agency was focused on creative and brand identity, and I guess brand strategy, but it hadn't really been formed back then as a sort of a discipline. It was kind of just, I used to think of it as just getting a brief for my team, right? But turns out that I was doing a lot of strategic work very early on, running workshops and so on. But we managed to find another local digital marketing agency who who was interested in buying us because of our back book, I think, of clients. And so we managed to sell our business to them, and I joined them. Eventually, became, after a couple of months, their creative director, ran their design team. And again, same sort of thing happened. I kind of sort of collect clients, and I find it hard to let clients go. So I was getting very, very busy, and again, my sort of it was getting a bit much. So I decided to flick the switch on LinkedIn to open to opportunities, and then was headhunted by a big fintech corporate who wanted me to come in and run their design department, or at least their creative element of their design department. So I found myself going in there, setting up an agency basically in-house for a global corporate in the UK. And yeah, really enjoyed that until I was offered an exit from there, which I took. And then I set up as a consultant, and very much kind of left my design kind of creative side of things, in terms of actually on the tools and doing the design behind me. I moved much more into business consultancy and strategy, and leveraging my skills of communication and facilitation to help leaders really align and build brands that aren't just tucked away in marketing, but are across all parts of their organization. That was probably a bit of a long-winded intro, but
It's
gives you a
okay.
bit of a snapshot into my varied history. I've been doing that for the last 5 or 6 years, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And just to your final point on that's my main bread and butter, that's my focus. So I'm a practitioner in that regard, and that's where I get the majority of my income. I also kind of found a bit of a I was getting a lot of attention from other designers who were about 5 or 6 years ago looking to move into brand strategy. I was out there doing it,
Mm.
and so I actually started a mastermind group which meets once a month, and so yeah, I've got I think it's close to approaching 70 global brand builders from all sorts of disciplines, and we
Brilliant.
get together and meet
Oh,
and discuss hot topics.
well
And
done.
I also do coaching for a few hand-selected individuals. So
Okay.
that's me in a nutshell, or not.
Okay, amazing. Well done. So, yeah, very exciting, and it's amazing to hear your journey and all the things you've been through, and it's great that you're giving back and you're helping others as well. We really want to talk to lots of leaders in the field and make sure that we're doing our best to support people and help people. And sharing ideas is always a good way to do that. So I was talking earlier about, you've obviously worked with a lot of amazing leaders. So what do you feel, from your experience so far, what do you feel are sort of the main character traits of an amazing, successful leader? What would you say really makes a great leader?
Well, for me, this is going to sound really simple, but a leader has to lead, right? So the leaders, a great leader has to have a vision, has to see the future that they're looking to build, has to
Mhm.
set high expectations, and has to be clear about what those expectations are. But really, they live in the future. Their mind is where we're going, right?
Yeah.
And that, if the leader can connect where we're going and give us all a compelling reason why that would be an amazing thing, then we're inspired and off we go with that leader. So for me, leader, number one, visionary, right? To be a great leader, you have to have a vision. There's an interesting biblical proverb, right, that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And
Okay.
the idea behind that, I believe, is that what it's saying is if you don't have a vision of where you're going, right, as a group of people, then
Mm,
you're all going to kind of wander off in different directions and become very vulnerable. If
yeah.
we've got a strong vision and a clear leader, a leader who can clearly articulate that and inspire us, we're all together. And what I find with my work is one of the challenges that even a leader with a great vision has is that communication piece and bringing everybody along for the ride and aligning everybody. And
Mm,
that for me is where brand strategy comes in. So,
yeah.
it's
Okay.
about that alignment piece and helping the leader meet, create, get to the destination. They may not know all of the bridges and mountains that we have to cross to get there. That's our job, right? To help that leader get there. But
Mm.
they have that promised land picture in their mind, and that's what a great leader should have.
Absolutely. And I've mentioned this lots of times on my channel, so probably people probably get bored of me saying it, but I always say to people when I first meet them, you've got to have a vision. It's so important to have it. If you haven't got a vision, you've got no idea, we've got no GPS and no idea what direction you're going in. And I find it crazy when people want to skim over that and they don't want to focus on that. And they just want to
Yeah,
focus on now.
I
You
agree. Well, I think also people are opportunists, right? And they kind of think that if I have a vision, it's always going to fail because another opportunity is going to come up and maybe we'll go for that. But I
know.
just think that's just it is a bit fickle. That is like for me, the strongest leaders are really clear about the organizations that they want to lead. They're really clear about the value that they want to add to the market, and in the back of all of their minds they are really conscious of legacy. Like they really want to make sure that what they're doing, they leave the world in a better place than when they found it, whatever that means to them. And I think those kind of characteristics, really are key to visionaries. And the other thing is as you as you sort of pointed out, when with leaders, they they need to kind of ensure that they get everybody. Well, I pointed this out before. They need to get everybody on the bus. And
Yeah.
the biggest thing I find is with leaders, the frustration, because I work with CEOs from all over the place. Their frustration usually is that their team are not aligned around, how they're going to get to that vision.
Mm,
And that is a very tricky thing. The alignment thing is tricky because what I find is that the process of becoming to get on the C-suite often means you have to be a bit of a lion, a bit independent. You might have to tread a few people underfoot along the way. And so imagine you're a CEO. Now you're faced with 8 people, or let's say roughly, all brilliant in their disciplines, all lions in their disciplines. And your job is to try and kind of get these lions who are used to running and being independent and, doing their own thing, to get them to kind of align around where we're going to go together collectively. And as I say, that's where I think brand comes in to play, because it's beyond any one department. It should, in my view, touch everybody. And perhaps it might be worth saying, Helen, like, how do I define a brand, just so that people know?
Okay.
For me, it isn't the logo and the fonts.
Mm.
Ultimately, the brand is the meaning that other people attach to you and your offer. That's how I see it.
Okay.
And the branding is the attempt to manage that meaning. And so it's a strategic function, and it needs to touch all parts of an organization so that customers feel it, and they assign the right meaning to what we decide as you go towards your vision.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're working with companies, like I work with agencies as well. Usually, if I work with an agency, I'll work with the owner and maybe a few of the team at the same time. So, what kind of activities would you say are sort of essential for them to implement into their kind of routine to bring a team together? Um, I know a lot of people try all kinds of things and they kind of fall out of the habit of doing it. You know, they do it for a while and then they kind of fall out of the habits. What do you think would be sort of the most successful habits for them to implement to keep the team working together, keep them focused on the same vision?
Yeah. So I think before we touch on that, I just want to just mention.
Mm,
So if we're talking about agencies, I think, frankly, it's tough in the creative industries right now. We've got the rise of AI. We've got a highly competitive global market. We've got universities and colleges churning out creatives left, right, and center. So, we've become commoditized in this space, right? Even, when I was running my agency 15, 16 years ago, we were doing like, WordPress websites, and, we actually were getting our hands dirty with code and CSS. And, with the rise of, say, Wix and Squarespace, and automated logo generators, and as I say, chat GTP, and the
mm,
emit Canva and all these things, the space is changing, the tools have changed, the game has changed.
yeah.
And the winners, in my humble opinion, are going to be the ones that have the vision, but also understand this very basic truth. And the basic truth is that you get paid for adding value to the market.
Mm,
So if you are finding yourself in a discipline which is being taken over by AI, and you are struggling, it's probably because the value that you once added to the market is not there anymore, because
mm,
it can be got cheaper, quicker, faster, and easier
yeah.
from other places.
Mm,
This means you have to shift. So if your vision, is reliant on your discipline, I think, you need to perhaps rethink that. My humble opinion is that you need to kind of consider the value that you're offering first, and the type of audience you're looking to help. So that's probably the best place to start, in my humble opinion, strategically thinking, who are
yeah.
you trying to help, and how are you going to help them overcome their problems? And once you get that, and you make, that's a decision, that's a strategic decision. It doesn't mean to say let's say I've done this with agencies before, we sit down, we have a look at where their revenue's coming from. You'll often find there's some patterns of types of sectors and industries where they're actually far well known and more dominant than, say, others.
Mm,
I always say, focus on what's working, and focus in on those projects which have been most successful, and
yeah.
ask yourself the question, what was the value that you were offering?
Hmm.
And oftentimes it isn't simply the fact that you churned out some work for those people. You probably solved a problem. You
Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
helped them become
Mhm.
better in some way.
It is about just doing the research and a lot of digging and caring more about what's really going on in the company, isn't it, than most companies will do. Most agencies just want to help everyone and do everything. And it's also surface level, isn't it? They're not really diving in and finding out what's really going on. And that's usually the main problem. So okay, and have you noticed, I know you do kind of workshops and things like that with companies. Have you found sort of, I mentioned earlier, do you do anything that kind of helps teams to, I don't know, start working better together or anything like that
Sure.
that you would sort of recommend?
Absolutely. loads I could talk about on this.
Okay, go for
I'll
it.
try and keep it simple though. I think once you've got your overall sort of strategy, you think, okay, we're going to head in this direction. A
Mm,
strategy should change you from where you are now and give you direction for the future, right?
mm,
Give you that, paint that vision. But then it's like, okay, well, how do we get there? And as you say, how do we align everybody around that? First of all, we've got to make sure we communicate that out, excite people. We might want to include them in the process of shaping that future vision.
mm,
And so that's where workshops come in great, because you can do a lot of collaboration, a lot of listening, and so on. But let's say we've painted that picture. How do we actually just keep that momentum going? I always think the difficulty is you've got the day-to-day bread and butter that has to be done, right? The
mm,
business as usual stuff. But if you're trying to shift away from that, you also have to try and find a way to spend time in the future, right? Or at least allocate some of your team in the future.
mm.
Now, there's a management consultant, quite a famous one from years back. He's called Peter Drucker. You lead it,
I've
you
heard of
read,
him. Yeah.
you probably have. Yeah, it's pretty famous.
Yeah.
I mean, he's set a lot of standards in how in the West we do business. But
Mm,
one of the things that he said was it's basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, basically impossible to have somebody focus on now and the future. It's
mm,
like almost impossible. So in the
yeah.
ideal world, his view is you pull people out of the business and you get them to work on the future. Now, if you're a small company, you can't do that. So you have to allocate and be really religious on the time that you're going to allocate to working in the future. In other words, let's say we're a generalist agency and we decide to niche in and really focus on a sector.
Mm,
Well, we need to dedicate some time to get into that sector, to focus on the language, the challenges, the issues of the type of people we want to solve. And we need to do that, as you say, in depth. So we're going to have to allocate 1, 2 days a month or whatever we can. And we have to really mark that out and say, right, there are 2 days. What are we going to cover in a 2 day sprint to reorientate our agency towards that? And the key here for what I found is I love to set with clients. I don't know if you've come across the OKR framework, which I think is pretty cool. So it's something used by, I think it was used by, I've got a book over there on it. IBM, I think it's used by Google. Um, it stands for objectives and key results.
wow.
And I found this a really useful planning tool because it's so simple, yet it's so powerful. And what you do is you agree your goal. So once we've got a bit of a strategy, we say, okay, well, in a year's time, what are our big goals? What do we want to have achieved?
Mm,
Um, we want to have orientated the marketing messages of our agency towards that new sector. We want to have exhibited at a big exhibition in that sector. We want to have won our first 3 new clients of X amount of revenue with that business, whatever it might be.
mm,
So, but do that as a team. They're your kind of big objectives, and define them and make them really clear. So make no more than 5, right? Just do them together. If you're in a small business, 5 big objectives outside of business as usual, right?
yeah.
And then underneath that, you need to set your key results. So your objective is we're going to win 3 clients of X amount of revenue in this sector. Your key results would be what that revenue is. You could even add some leading and lagging indicators there. So a leading indicator might be, well, how many leads have we generated in
Yeah.
that sector that would qualify, and so on.
Mm,
Now, what that does is it gives you a direction. And what you then need to do is build cadence behind that. So every month, every 2 weeks, whatever your cadence is, you want to be getting your team together, reviewing what we agreed was a good objective and key result, having allocated responsibility for those, then reviewing against that. And you'll be surprised just by doing that how much progress can be made. A lot of people just are on a whim and a prayer.
yeah.
You have to really um, design your way forward
Mm.
in order and track it in order to see progress.
Yeah, it's definitely about setting new habits in the business, isn't it? And I always say to people, it's a bit like if you wanted to go and get a six pack at the gym, you don't just do it once. You have to get into a routine. You have to get a trainer, and you have to be accountable. And it's like there's so many things that people they usually come back and say, "Oh yeah, that's great," and I have to keep reminding them, "Okay, are you doing that? Are you doing this?" And I keep them on track because often when people are just left on their own, leave them for a week and they probably won't do much. You've got to really keep people on the ball. One agency I worked with recently have been amazing, and they actually allocated a whole day every week to work on what we were doing, and they absolutely blasted it. They got new clients closing really, really quickly, because a lot of them had been sat there for a long time. They just didn't know how to communicate the value that they brought. And once they understood that, and they actually started to appreciate what they could really do for their clients again, because a lot of people forget after so many years,
Yeah,
they actually started to, close a lot of those projects again, which was so exciting. But yeah, it is about just routine. And even like individuals that I help, I say to them, well, do at least an hour a day. If you can't focus on the future of your business for an hour a day, it's very, very hard to actually take any steps forwards. You like digging yourself in a hole every day if you're not moving forwards. Um,
100%. I think the other thing to throw into the mix there is, let's take your analogy of getting a six pack in the gym, which of course you and I have definitely, got, but no one can see that, unfortunately, for them.
I used to
Um,
have one.
Me too, back in the day. Anyway, moving on. But let's say we were determined to do that. You're right about the discipline, but also the discipline is what you're not going to do, right? And that's a good strategy. A good strategy should make you think, okay, these are the things I am going to do, and these are the things I'm not going to do.
Yeah.
And it should help you prioritize as a team. Um, and so, so as soon as you say that, some people freak out, like particularly if you talk about, okay, niching or becoming more valuable to a particular sector, they worry that that
Mm.
means that they will have to say no to anything else that comes, and therefore that will leave them vulnerable. I always say to people, no, don't. If you do decide to niche, don't worry. You can still take on projects from other sources, your back book
Yeah.
of clients, like, but the point is you're starting to orientate your business towards a more highly valuable and highly specialized area, which you
Mm.
believe will be more profitable.
Yeah.
Just not going to talk about perhaps as much as you used to some of the other stuff that you used to do, and you'll find that slowly you orientate and towards that. But
Mm.
that's one thing. The other thing I was going to say, you were saying about routines and doing stuff. I think celebration is so important in a team, right? So when I ran the design team, we used to have this little thing. I think it was a 20-person team. You do your standard huddles and your Kanban boards, whatever you decide to do to traffic work through your team. But I always used to say, right, at the start of the week, huddle, Monday huddle, we used to have this thing, which was the last week's hero of the week, right?
Okay.
And so we used to have it. I bought this stupid little cup, right, which was from like Poundland or something, which was like a silver little cup with
Mm.
ribbons on the side, which soon became tattered. And we used to, it was an artifact, an emblem of brilliance in the team. And
Mm.
as a team, I used to say, right, so who are we going to nominate? Who are we as a team going to nominate from last week? And so someone said, oh, Lucy, she was great. She stayed up late, and did that amazing project. And someone said, oh, Michelle, she went over and above at that, taking that meeting when she didn't have to, or whatever. And you'd have this discussion, and then it would be my job as the boss to sort of, out of the nominations, to select. And so I'd be like, right, Lucy, everyone else has done an awesome job, but Lucy, I think you definitely did the best thing to move us forward to our strategy. You are the studio hero of the week. And then Lucy would put that on her desk. It'd be a matter of pride. Sometimes we'd take photos of it and ping it around the company on Slack or whatever. And
Brilliant.
yeah, I think as a leader, you need to celebrate moments like that. And that was just in our small team, but you can do it more formally. You can have more kind of, I work with one agency in New York at the moment who will me in to help with strategy stuff. And they have a thing called kudos points, which you can do on Slack. So if somebody's done a good job, I see on their Slack channel, somebody says, oh, I'm going to give Helen some kudos. And at the end of each week, again, they have a kudos board, and I think they've got like a financial reward at the end of the year for
Oh,
whoever finished.
great. That's a good idea.
And they
Mm.
do monthly ones as well. So
Yeah.
there's things like that you can do, and it's what you really want to do is focus it on your values and on what's moving the dial in terms of moving the business forward
Yeah.
in the new direction. And what you want to do is celebrate, because I find that sort of the carrot is much more appealing than the stick, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, right? That people are
Absolutely.
more interested in doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. And so, obviously, yeah, when you start putting lots of processes together and strategies and get into better routines, obviously that grows a lot of momentum for the business. Is there anything that you would, I don't know, that you've learned from maybe some of the people that have taught you? I know you've worked with like Martin Umar and people like that. Is there anything that you sort of have been taught in the past that would be like one key thing that's Yeah, that's really stayed with you and you've kind of shared it with everyone that you've helped.
Oh, that's a big one. It might come back down to what I said at the start, which is you get paid for adding value.
Mm,
If you're an employee, it's the same.
yeah,
If you're out freelancing, it's the same. If you're an agency, it's the same. The way in our society that we basically acknowledge value is by money. And whether you like that or not, whether you're into capitalism or not, that's the reality of the paradigm that we live in. And
yeah,
therefore, if you want to make more money, you have to become more valuable. So the question is, how do you become more valuable? And that should be the question that every leader has on their mind
mm,
constantly. How can I add more value and be more valuable? And if you've got that in your mind, I think that it means you approach things differently. It's not about you. It's not about blaming everybody around you. It's not about being a victim. It's about thinking, well, how can I change myself so
mm,
that I am of more use to others? And
definitely.
it's like
Mm,
that's whole servant leadership kind of scenario. Uh,
yeah,
that approach to brand to business, I just find is, you've got to keep that that mindset. And what we tend to do, unfortunately, is we start to make things about us, not about others. I
yeah,
want this. Why are they not doing this? Your pride, your ego gets involved.
mm,
Frankly, you cannot. If you start going down that track, you're in trouble. Stop being so pig-headed, right?
yeah.
Start thinking about what you can do for others. Stop thinking about what others should be doing for you.
Yeah, well said, because often people that come to me aren't doing anything of value, like publicly or on social media. They're not giving anything, and I
Exactly.
that's usually the first thing I say to them. What are you doing already to try and get any attention, or just to try and help people? What are you doing? And often they're like, well, we're not really doing anything. We've relied on referrals for the last so many years. And it's like, well, that has slowed down for a reason, because you're not giving enough value. You're not sharing all the knowledge and expertise you have with the world. Obviously, that's going to have a massive impact. What you give, you receive. So that's what I believe. The more you
I
give,
agree with that.
the more you receive. Mm,
I totally agree with that. Listen, let me tell you the story. So when I ran my own agency, I was very much of the mindset that, our work would speak for itself, right? So
mm,
we didn't go in for any awards, we didn't do any PR. We did a few blog posts, but maybe a couple of things on social, but we didn't really push it. I sold my agency to another agency, as I mentioned, and I'm sat in this boardroom meeting, and the CEO there, or managing director, as we called him, he was very different to me at the time. So he was much more kind of extrovert, very open to, had his own PR team that would literally look after him. Like
wow.
it was different. Yeah, they had a budget to pay to go into awards, that kind of stuff. I was like, so you can imagine that's quite a different cultural difference between my agency that I sold to them and theirs. Anyway, I was a bit like, kind of probably a bit British about it all. And I was a bit like, well, I don't like to blow my own trumpet kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'll go, I've sold my company to them, so I might as well go. They're doing very, very well. So let's go in. So I'm sat there in this boardroom and we'd won an award. And usually the MD would go and collect the award and do the speech and all that stuff. But he was, I think it was his son's birthday or something. He was unavailable. And so he was like, Matt, we want you to pick up this award. Um, I think it was at the Derbyshire Chamber of Commerce, actually, funny enough, because I know that that's your sort of old stomping ground.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was like, oh no, this really isn't my thing. It just feels so arrogant. Like I don't, I can public speak, but I just don't want to do that. Anyway, I remember he privately called me aside and basically said, Matt, like at the end of the day, he said, you're saying like we're arrogant. He said, I think you're arrogant. And I was like, whoa. He was like, you think like that we can sit in this like dark room and the phone will ring because the world knows how brilliant our work is. Well, the reality is it's not that. That isn't how it works. We have to get out there. We have to be vulnerable. We have to show a bit of ourselves.
Mm,
And as you say, we have to give back and we have to give for free. And
mm,
what we find then is that you become known and appreciated and trust is built. And that's how we win business. And
yeah.
it completely changed my mind. So I went and did the speech, but that started a whole kind of way of thinking. So eventually, when I started out as a consultant, I'd been in the house for about a year. I'd not really built a network. I wasn't looking to go into consulting. Had some opportunities, and when I decided, right, I'm going to go for this, I realized how true that advice was. If you don't blow your trumpet, nobody else will. So
Mm.
you have to. Yes, it feels uncomfortable. Yes, it feels weird. Yes, you have to stick your neck on the line and say, well, this is how I believe it is. You have to be a thought leader. You have to promote things.
Mm.
And I think once you do that, you'll find that the universe gives back to you. And just a point that I forgot to mention at the start, I do happen to run a bit of a podcast called Just Branding with
Oh,
a co-host called Jacob Cass. And
okay.
that was a bit of a project like that. Like me and Jacob, we do that out of love for the industry and to give back, and really we learn a bit from the guests, but it's kind of a bit of a passion project. And yeah, we've just been sponsored by Wix, which is super super thrilling for us, and we've built it now. We're doing quite well in that space. So the point is that you don't know where these things are going to lead. And now I have clients coming to me sometimes through listening to the podcast, or they'll come across me and listen to these things. You've got to give out. You've got to throw your bread upon the waters, as another biblical proverb says, and it will come back to you in more abundance.
It is just the fear factor that most people have to get over, isn't it? To be able to do that. And they've got to remember it's not about them. It's not about
Exactly.
worrying about how you sound or how you look or anything like that. It's about just the message. How can you help someone? What can you say today that's going to make a bigger difference and probably change their life if they start thinking in a different way. So yeah, it's an exciting thought for a lot of people that aren't quite at that stage yet. They're not quite realized that that's what they need to do to make a much bigger impact.
I think a lot of people in the creative industries, unfortunately, they see themselves. They may not really frame it like this in their own minds, but the reality is they see themselves as a pair of hands, right? A lot of designers,
Yeah.
copywriters, and so on. What they want is someone to come, have done most of the thinking, and then come with a brief and say, execute on this precisely as we've said it.
Mm,
The reality is then as time is going on, as I sort of hinted at earlier, as a pair of hands, your value is diminished because
mm,
robots, other tools coming in will be able to do those things.
mm,
So we have to start realizing the value that we offer is in our brains. And as you say, it's making people think differently. It's inspiring people. It's the creativity that we can add. And, I often say to designers, just because like me, like I'm a graphic designer, I think a certain way. Well, in my past, I was a graphic designer. I think a certain way, but I'm
yeah.
now deploying the same principles.
Mm,
I'm deploying the same principles then to how I might help a big company through a change management program,
mm,
or how I might help a leadership team, how I might design a workshop for a leadership team very specific to the niche that they're in to kind of grow and unite around a new plan. All of these things, you're still using the principled skills you've got, but not as a pair of hands anymore, as a brain to help them overcome problems and to add more value to them. So
absolutely.
think outside the box.
I totally agree. And I think also a lot of people don't realize that you have to get to that stage, you have to be good at following and leading. So you have to be a good follower, first of all. So, you've got to make sure that you're following people that can help you, but also when you're ready to be a leader, you've got to lead yourself first. If you can't lead yourself and be accountable and do what you say you're going to do and stick to the things that you've promised yourself, then it's very hard to be a leader to anybody else or to a company. So a lot of people just, yeah, there's a lot to learn on the mindset side, isn't there? But it's very interesting.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the mindset thing is, it's interesting you mentioned that. Funnily enough, my mastermind group, was it last week? Um, we had the topic of imposter syndrome
Okay.
that we were
Mm,
discussing. And yeah, huge one, right? Mental health and
yeah.
stress and but
Mm,
mainly around imposter syndrome. And one of the things that we all do is self-sabotage a lot. And we do become our own victims, right, in our minds. And as you say, it's a mindset thing. But as soon as I've found that I shift from thinking about me to thinking about, as you say, the value I can add to others. If I've got to do a talk or a podcast or anything like that, that perhaps many years ago would freak me out. Now I just think, well, look, it's not really about me. It's about what I can do for the listeners or the audience or my
yeah.
client in some cases.
Yeah.
And as soon as you take yourself out, actually some of the pressure comes off. Some people say, well, don't you need to know the answers to everything? Then I'm like, no, because I've more shifted in the consultancy space. It's kind of like my job now is not necessarily to have all the answers. My job is to facilitate the space for my client to collaborate to come to an answer. Or as an advisor, I can go out and get other people to come in who are experts who can overcome some of these challenges.
Yeah.
So you don't always have to have every answer to every problem, but you
No.
do need to be dedicated to help people find a solution.
Yeah, and often we know more than we think we do. I think a lot of people don't it's kind of underestimate the amount of knowledge that they do have until they're put in that position, and then like, oh yeah, actually, I've just learned something myself that I didn't even realize. And it's sometimes, because you accumulate so much knowledge and value over the years. Um, like I said earlier, people just take it for granted. They don't realize how valuable they are and what they can really do to other lead their own companies and lead other companies as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's an interesting point. I had a similar I don't know, epiphany around that when I left my corporate job, and yeah, I was kind of out in the wild, and I was like, what on earth do I do? I've run a business, I've done freelance, I've done in-house, I've done senior roles. What am I doing with myself? And I kind of looked back and thought, I, someone said to me, a project came up, or so someone I'd known from yonks ago said, "Oh, would you just mind coming on as a consultant?" And I thought, consultants aren't they like wizened 70-year-old like Yodas? Like I'm not that. I'm still like to think I've got some life left in me. I don't feel like I'm a consultant. And then they were saying to me, "Yeah, but Matt, you've seen so much. You've got a unique perspective.
Mm,
You could offer a lot of value here." And I was like, after a while, I was thinking about it, thinking, yeah, actually, I have seen a lot. I have seen a lot of boardrooms. I have worked with a lot of teams. I've worked on a lot of. If you work in brand and stuff, your experience is immense. You've probably, if
mm,
you've been in a generalist sector, you've probably seen a lot of things, and you've seen patterns emerging.
mm,
And you've just got to have that confidence to connect the dot between what's deep down inside of you and what you've experienced and what value you can offer
mm,
to other people. And so I looked back at my career and I was thinking, um, okay, um, where was I at my best? Where were people knocking on the door to hire me? When I was in agency, for example, they didn't
mm,
want anyone else. They want Matt. Where was that? So think through your career if you're trying to find the value that you can offer. And for me, it was actually in the workshops and in the strategic thinking I was doing, which at the time I didn't even think of. I just thought I was getting a good brief.
yeah,
But yeah, when I look back, I was like, that is where people really found me useful.
yeah,
So I'm going to double down on that. So that's another piece of advice, perhaps it might be helpful.
mm,
Double down on what's working, right? Whatever, you've probably got the secrets tucked away already for more success
yeah.
in you, but you've just got to shine the torch around and try and find what those things are.
It's so hard, isn't it, sometimes when you're in your own little world and it's like, especially when you're busy and there's so much going on and you've got other people in your team to look after and try and, yeah, there's like so much going on. A lot of people are very overwhelmed in their own businesses. And I think that's why they find it hard to lead because there's just so many different things that needs their attention. What kind of advice would you give somebody that's really overwhelmed and doesn't really know where to start?
Well, if you're very, very overwhelmed, and I mean like in a non-healthy way, I think you need to rely on others to help you,
Mm,
right? Because I think and that's slightly scary, but if you are, and I've been there, like slightly burnt out and very, very stressed, and you're not quite sure which way to turn,
yeah,
um, get if you've got a team that you can trust, like get them together, and you don't necessarily have to scare them all with financials or anything like that. But if you're struggling in that regard, but what you could do is say, look, I want us to think about the future of our business and help them to frame the future with you. If you're not comfortable sharing with your team, get a mentor, get in a support group. You'll be surprised how many people would be happy to help you if you just reach out and just say, hey, I'm actually really struggling. I'd
yeah,
just love an hour of your time. A lot of people are very generous,
yeah,
and would happily help another human being. You just have to be the one to potentially be a little bit vulnerable to start with, and open that up.
mm,
Um, I know for a fact, a lot of people in my mastermind, um, you know, a lot of them at times, and we've been doing it for maybe 3 or 4 years now, have been vulnerable. And some of the most confident people that you look at and you think, oh, these people are absolutely flying. At some point, that they're not, and they need help, and we all need help. And there's no shame in reaching out to other people. And as I say, don't just rely on yourself. Other people there will help you. Another thing I would say is, if you are feeling overwhelmed and really stressed, again, you've got to carve out the time for the best things.
Yeah.
For the right thing. And I always think reading is a discipline that is fast disappearing, but is so useful, because
Mm.
carve out half an hour in the morning, in the early morning before the kids get up, right? Just carve out half an hour for yourself every week, like discipline, like you're saying. Read books. You'll be surprised at the amount of confidence and new knowledge that you will learn, and the changes that can bring to you. But you've got to be the one to get up and get yourself sorted. Stop looking at everyone else. Look at yourself. Not
Yeah,
be a victim.
that's it. Absolutely. Yeah, because some people just won't let you help them, which is really sad. And they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, which
Definition
obviously
of madness, isn't it?
it is,
Definitely.
absolutely, yeah. But obviously that, usually that's quite rare, which is a good thing. But yeah, but most people do acknowledge that they need help, and they just find it hard to make those first steps. And that's why you do reach out. You get help. You start looking at things from a different angle, different perspective, probably things that you've never realized before, because you're trying to fight the fires every day rather and be reactive rather than proactive. So it is about just taking hold of the situation, taking control, taking a deep breath, and and starting to do things in a sort of a more systematic, logical way, really, for the business. And making time, like you said, making time for it is so important.
The other thing I would say is go easy on yourself, right?
Mm,
Like, we
yeah,
can be our harshest critics, and we know all of our vulnerabilities, and we amplify them. Our brains are kind of hardwired to focus on what could kill us, right? And we're fully aware of all our weaknesses and what could kill us.
yeah,
But go easy on yourself. A lot of people, they say they want change, and it's so scary. But like, think about incremental change, marginal gains. Maybe you do need a drastic change, but it's highly unlikely that you do. You probably just need to start thinking about approaching things slowly. And if you do it like that, if you think to yourself, I'm going to give myself a bit of a runway here. I'm going to give myself 12 months. But you're sure about that. You're saying in 12 months things will be different. But it's not like you have to change everything next week. Then if you give yourself 12 months, okay, spend the first 2 months exploring, and then the next few months actually starting to warm everybody up, and then the next few months starting to make changes, and then
mm,
just you've got to kind of set the timeline, as you say, take control of the situation, um, carve it up as per your context
mm.
to make change happen. And they do say, I think, I can't remember, is it Chinese proverb or I can't remember where it says, how do you eat an elephant, right? And
Oh, yeah,
it's
one bite at a time.
one
Yeah,
bite at a time. So
absolutely.
at the end of the day, don't feel, if you know something's wrong, it's not working.
Mm,
Um, don't think you have to change everything tomorrow. Take your time, is my
yeah,
point.
yeah, good
Another
advice.
thing I'd say is have some downtime for your poor brain.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
we're talking about mental health. Like, I mean, I've burnt myself out a number of times, and I start to see the symptoms now.
Yeah.
But what I've realized, over the years, is that your brain is like a muscle, right? So I've probably got ADHD. I've never been undiagnosed, but you could probably tell. I definitely, I think at a million miles an hour. I do a lot of stuff. I'm very creative, and I get a lot of stuff done. And I could do more in a day than some people. I know it sounds quite pig-headed, but my wife says this of me: you can do more in a day than some people do in a week, right? And that might be true or might not be true. You'd have to work with me to find out. The point is this: I can burn out, right? I can. And so what
Mm,
I've realized is your brain is like a muscle. If I'm doing weights in the gym, and my bicep is starting to get really tired, okay, I can feel it, I can see it. I stop. If I've got a broken leg, everyone says, "Oh, don't run up that mountain, Matt. You've got a broken leg." But if your brain starts to get really tired and fatigued and broken, which it can do because of stress and and worry and anxiety and all of that stuff,
Mm.
what can happen is you can spiral, and you need to be super careful with that. So what I sort of advise people is that you've got to take some time out to rest. You've
Yeah.
got to go on holiday. You've got to have breaks. Saturdays should be, or Sundays, you should be resting. Think about how you're sleeping. Think about what you're eating. Think about how you're exercising. All of these things make you a whole person. And
Yeah.
so you might have a challenge or a problem or something that you need to change outside of that's at work, but don't let that become all consuming.
Mm.
Make sure you spend some time, and rest your brain.
Yeah, I mean, most people that are amazing leaders are very good with their own their own personal habits, like exercise, like eating the right food, all of that stuff. The people that are really successful because they've realized how much it affects their own productivity. So if they're not feeling good, it stops you from progressing in your business. So I always say to people, if you get into that stage, think of things you can do. Go for a walk. Can you, I don't know, do something crazy like, I don't know, put favorite music on and start dancing around the living room, whatever you need to do to feel better and come back to work and start, and be more productive. It's all about making yourself feel good because yeah, if you're not feeling good, you're not going to get the results you want. I think that's something that I didn't realize for such a long time in my journey, that if I wasn't looking after myself as much as I should have done. And yeah, it showed massively. It really did. And my results were like up and down all the time because of that, because I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't caring enough about myself to have those healthy routines so that I could make sure that when I was at work, when I was doing my work, I could actually be really productive. I could be full of energy, full of beams, and excited, and be in the right headspace to help people. And yeah, it's so
It's
important.
about self-control and discipline, and
Yeah.
that's that is difficult, particularly if you're facing a difficult situation. But for
Mm,
most of us, if we're not, you can do things to make sure you don't slip into a difficult situation, as you say, to show up powerfully. I think as a leader, you set the tone. Everybody's marching to your beat. So if your beat's all over the place, the business is going to suffer. Keep calm.
yeah.
People want strong leaders. And when I say strong leaders, I don't mean toxic leaders. I just mean leaders that are calm. They set their expectations, they set the vision, and they empower people to help them towards that vision. One final thing, perhaps we could sort of finish by. You asked me about good leaders. One thing I've observed is a good leader will delegate very, very well. In
Hmm.
other words, they will say, Larry, right? Our vision. I want you to take point on this part of it. This is your responsibility. I'm trusting you and I have the confidence in you. If you struggle, I'm here to support, but
Mm,
that is your bag. And then the leader backs off, right? And allows Larry to do his thing.
yeah.
And I think if you do that across a team, you'll get, I remember being part of a team, and the team leader was obsessed by high performing teams and in sports and all sorts of things.
Okay.
And he taught me that. And he said to me, um, in a high performing sports team, everybody has a very, very clear role that only they can do. And we trust them to do that role. And at the end of the day, it's the same in business. If you're a leader and you kind of, in the weeds, micromanaging everybody, it's not going to work. Have the confidence in the people around you. Give them the ability. Give them the benefit of the doubt, and watch them soar. And if they don't, then that's when you have to have a difficult conversation. At that point, maybe they're the wrong person. They're
Yeah.
they're the wrong person to help get you there. But
Mm.
give them a chance first. I always think, and empower them before you then pull them out.
Because a lot of people are scared to take to delegate and to stop watching every move that everyone takes. A lot of people find that really hard, and they sort of have something about they've got to control everything. And the thing is, you can't always be watching everything. It's like, it's obviously depends what kind of business you want to grow, but it's pretty impossible, isn't it, to be able to.
Should Yeah, I mean, what kind of a world would we live in if that had to happen all the time? I think, yeah, this is the thing. I think that ability to trust others
Mm.
And going full circle to our start, if you've got a strong enough vision and you feel like you've inspired everybody towards that vision, if you've done that correctly, you shouldn't have to micromanage people. People should understand and be on board and excited. And if they're not, frankly, they're probably the wrong person for you. And that's another consideration that you'd have to bear in mind. But for now, focus on that vision, focus on inspiring people towards it. As a good leader, that's your job.
Yeah, fantastic. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today. I've really enjoyed our chat, and it's been amazing to get to know you a bit more as well. Thank you so much. If you want to drop any links or anything to add to this discussion, then you're very welcome.
That's
Uh,
very kind. All I'd say to folks is if you found it interesting, happy to connect on LinkedIn. Matt Davies, you'll find me there as a executive consultant on brand strategy. And yeah, check out my website, mrmattdavies.me. Happy to always start any conversations at all.
okay, fantastic. Thanks, Matt. Have an amazing week, and yeah, keep in touch.
Will do. Thanks, Helen. It's been an honor.